ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Angelo.
Thank you very much, Reverend Frank. And first of all, thank you to Reverend Sarah, Judy, Donna, all of you from the temple for hosting me and giving me this opportunity to talk tonight. And also, thank you all for coming for such a joyful and happy topic, suicide. I really wanted to talk about it because there is absolutely no topic in life I overlook. And everything is part of the human condition. Unfortunately, suicide has been growing year after year in the entire globe. So it's something which might be interesting to think about. Also, I thought that it might be a topic which concerns everybody. Maybe you did at some point struggle with suicidal thoughts. Maybe you did lose somebody who took his own life. Or maybe you are worried about somebody you know who is fragile, and maybe you are wondering if that person is not gonna commit suicide. Or maybe you know somebody who did lose somebody this way, or maybe you do know somebody who might be worried about someone else. So for all those reasons, I really thought that this topic concerned everybody. The very first time I came across suicide was when I was, hard to tell, 7, 8, 9. I was very, very young. Back then, my parents did belong to a community which organized that particular year a party for New Year's Eve. And my parents were invited, and obviously they took me with them. And I don't have a lot of memories about this party except that man. I remember his name, Christian. I remember his face. He was a bit chubby, dark brown hair, wearing glasses, and he was so soft. And we spoke the entire night, which when I think about it now is kind of sad. If you think about this man being invited, he was in his 30s, and the only person he connected with was this 9-year-old child he had never met before. And when we went back home in the car, my mom told me something like, "Hey, Angelo, you made a new friend tonight." And I remember telling her, "Mom, he's a sad man. I feel his sadness. He's very sad." A bit later, we learned that he was found out at his place, hung up at the top of a staircase. When it comes to me, to be honest with you, there is one moment in my life where I did struggle with suicidal thoughts. It was in 2006, 2007. My mother just passed away in horrible conditions, and then my father fell sick. He had to go through a heart surgery, and things didn't go really that well for him, to the point that he went into coma. So after losing my mom, I was possibly about to lose my dad. And I didn't have any girlfriend, I didn't have really close friends, I didn't have job, I didn't have money, I didn't have hope, I didn't have nothing. And that's really the moment where I prayed to God and I begged him to save me. And he did. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here tonight standing in front of you. Before I switch to the really spiritual part of suicide, I would like to take a few minutes to address suicide in general. And I would like to tell you, in the case you did lose somebody who committed suicide, it's not your fault. And I really want you to tell people, if you know some people who did lose people this way, let them know it's not their fault. Because when something so dramatic happens in our life, it's easy to be like, "I didn't see it." Or "Why did I say this? Why did I do that? Why couldn't I do this?" Or whatever. No. The responsibility of suicide lays on the shoulders of the person who does commit the act. Even about all those sad cases that we hear on the news, people who are bullied at school, in university, or even at job, and who take their own life. Do you think that up there, they're gonna be like, "Okay, you did it, but not really because you were bullied"? No, they're gonna have to put up with the consequences. Not to say that the bullies won't have to deal with karma, but the people who did commit the act will have to bear the consequences. So let's try to be very simple about suicide in a very clear and simple way. So many books have been written about it. I'm not going to pretend to crack the code in a few minutes, but let's try to make things as simple as possible. Where does suicide come from? It comes from suicidal thoughts. Where do suicidal thoughts come from? They come from depression. And how can we define depression? Well, depression is the fact for an individual to focus on thoughts of low quality thoughts that are detrimental to him, are very toxic. And he really focus on those thoughts to the point that he really believes that those thoughts are real. But they are not. They are just thoughts in his head. They are not real. And because of the very simple rule, what you focus on, you create more of. As easy as that. The person focuses on low quality thoughts, toxic thoughts, he creates more of them. To the point that those thoughts become independent. This is, and now I'm starting to speak about from a spiritual standpoint, this is what we call thought forms. So he creates those thought forms which become independent and start coming at him. And when you look from an energy standpoint, someone who is depressed and has suicidal thoughts, you will see in his aura, in his energy field, cracks, holes. It's not uncommon. And through those cracks, through those holes, bad energies, bad spirits can come. And this is what we call spiritual attachment. And those dark energy, whether his own thought forms created or external energies, feed off of him, of his despair, and lead him to be even more and more despaired. And because that person is focusing on all those thoughts, this is what creates the mental jail. He thinks that things are the way they are and they will never change. He just wants peace because he doesn't see any way out. So how can you help? How can we help someone who has depression and possibly suicidal thoughts? Maybe it will be useful if you know people like that, or if you know people who know people like that. We said that the person is focusing on wrong thoughts. So what we need to do is, number one, understand what are those thoughts. And number two, to help the person to switch to more healthy and harmonious thoughts. For instance, when it comes to me, when I begged God to save me, He did it through two people, two persons, two individuals who appeared in my life. The first one was someone who had just created a real estate agency. He knew I was a mess, but he said, "Hey, Angelo, I need somebody, come on in." And the fact to work for him, I started to think about work. I started because I had a goal. I started to think about making money, doing something. So it helped me to start switching my thoughts. The second person who came across my path was this employee at the gym. He was a boxer. And he said, "Come to my boxing class." And I did. I went there. Likewise, I started to meet other people. I started to like boxing. I have a goal. I started to think about it. So it helped me to switch my thoughts. So likewise, if you know people who are struggling with depression and suicidal tendencies, help them to switch their thoughts. Maybe it will be a dancing class, a singing class, a cooking class, a sculpture, a painting class. Maybe it will be pets, animals. Maybe it will be volunteering for charity cause, whatever. But help them to switch their thoughts, and it will help them. Obviously, displaying our love to people who are depressed and who have suicidal thoughts is of paramount importance, and also to let them know that they count, that they have a value, because most of the people who struggle with suicidal thoughts think nobody cares, that if they do it, nobody will notice. It's not going to make any difference. No, let them know you are valuable. The world is different because you are in it. So you do matter, and you do matter for us, you do matter for the world, you do matter for me. Obviously, pray. Now I'm going to start to switch really to the spiritual side of suicide. Obviously, pray for those people, and the choice is yours. You can pray to God. You can pray to our Savior, Jesus Christ, the Master of Healers. You can pray to our spiritual mother, to us all, the Virgin Mary, who will be more than happy to comfort. If you want to deal more with angelic energies, obviously, you all know Raphael, but do not overlook Michael for the reasons I explained to you earlier, the negative thought forms, the negative energies, the protection against all those dark forces which feed off the person's despair. So do not overlook Michael also in this case. And if you want to go through saints, you have the choice. Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux is a great choice for that. Saint Charbel Maclouf, great saint. Padre Pio, Saint Rita, the choice is yours. And through your prayer, I wish people could see with their own eyes the effect of prayer, and they will see that prayer is always effective. Even if you don't really see something tangible, just know that in the energies of the person, you are making a difference, okay? You are definitely making a difference. And God is not asking you to save those people, but if God sees that from both a mundane and spiritual standpoint, you are trying the best you can to relieve those people, He will be very happy about you, and you will be even more blessed. Spiritual part of the suicide is in the second part of the speech. When you look at the energy centers, also called chakras, of an individual who is dealing with depression and serious suicidal thoughts, you will unfortunately clearly see how bad he's feeling. Because that person doesn't have any more survival instinct and is feeling disconnected from life, is not grounded anymore, and has a lot of anxiety and tension. This is the reason why his root chakra is blocked. I'm not going to say shut down because technically speaking, we couldn't function with shut down fully chakras. So I'd rather use the word blocked. Because also the person has disconnected himself or herself from his own inner child and has lost all possible joy and relaxation. This is the reason why his sacral chakra is blocked. Such a person doesn't want to deal with life anymore, doesn't want to live, to go out there. They just want to stay in bed. Even just taking a bath, a shower is a mission. They don't have any more willpower. That's why their solar plexus is blocked. No need to speak about the heart. Their emotion is all over the place. And that's why the heart chakra is blocked. They do not want to talk, to engage with anybody. Or if they do, it's to cry and to express their despair. That's why their throat chakra is blocked. They don't see any more light at the end of the tunnel. They think this is it. They are stuck forever. They have no goal, no plan. They see no light. And that's why their third eye chakra is blocked. And obviously, they have all those terrible thoughts, including suicidal thoughts. That's why their crown chakra is blocked. So, when it comes to suicide, is it admissible? I know it's a weird question, but you will understand why I'm asking it. Because I've been dealing with people with different views on suicide, and it's quite interesting. Well, obviously we can do it. God gave us free will. So we can use that free will to that extent to take our own life. But it's not because we can do something that it's compatible with God's will or God's laws. For instance, I could go out tonight after the service and kill a bunch of people. Can I do it? Certainly I can. But would it be okay with God's laws? Absolutely not. Suicide is likewise. And let me tell you this. Before we come to earth, we set up a certain amount of exit points, possible moment for us to go back to heaven. That's why maybe some of you went into a car accident and you survived. Could have been an exit point. Maybe you went through a surgery, it could have been bad, you survived. Maybe somebody you know should have taken the train, the flight, you know the story, and then the flight crashes, and the last time the person thought, no, I'm not going to take that flight. Well, it was possibly an exit point. So we have many exit points, a few. The last one being, obviously, if none of the exit points before have been used, the last one being the moment we go back to heaven, obviously. And let me be clear with that. Suicide has never been, is not, and never will be an exit point. In other words, suicide is not part of the soul's plan. Think about it. By default, we are energy, consciousness, spirits, souls, call it the way you want. Between incarnations, we can spend centuries up there. We can spend 200 years, 300 years. Nobody's going to tell us, hey, you need to go back. No. We go back because we want to. I know it sounds weird, but yes, we do want to. And not because somebody is telling us we need to. So when you count the amount of human lifetime we spend on earth compared to all the time we spend on heaven, the amount of time spent in incarnation is ridiculously low. So all this to say, when the soul decides to come back to earth, to incarnate, it's not to stop the journey, to go back again up there. Because by default, we are up there. By default, we are consciousness and spirit. No, when the soul decides to come to earth, it's to fulfill a journey, to improve, to learn lessons, to go through challenges and joy and all the human condition. Not to be like I'm going there, but it's too hard. I want to go back. No, doesn't make sense. Also, I spoke 3 months ago. Last time I spoke here in December, I spoke about the two things which can prevent you from going back to heaven. And one of those two things is guilt. And just know that many of those individuals who unfortunately do commit suicide feel guilty. Do you think that God would give us a way to normally transition under his own will and law to be stuck in limbo? Absolutely not. So although we have the free will to do it, it doesn't mean that it's part of the soul's journey. And it doesn't mean that from a spiritual, godly, karmic standpoint, it's okay. So obviously, as you know, we won't be punished if we do it. People who decide to commit suicide are not punished. Nobody's going to yell at them. No, nobody's going to scold them, and no, they won't end up in hell. Let's leave that for religion, but this is not what happens. On the contrary, when an individual does commit suicide, is welcomed with a lot of love, a lot of tenderness, a lot of comfort, because it's a shock for the soul, it's a shock for the energies, and as above, so below, there are hospitals and doctors and things, healing centers, let's put it this way, up there. And the soul really has to go through a lot of healing to recover from that traumatic experience, first off. But more than that, once you could say soul, spirit, it doesn't matter, I'm going to say soul. When the soul of the individual sees what he or she did, with the clear understanding and clear view of who the soul really is, which is not an information we have consciously here as human beings. We identify ourselves as who we are, the ego part. We might know we had some past lives, we might even have studied them, but we are not living 24/7 in that pure, with that pure knowledge of who we truly are. But when we are up there, then we remember everything. And everything takes another dimension to the point that when the soul does see again, is given the opportunity to see the trials he had to go through, the pain he experienced, and the decision he made, he feels guilty because it feels almost trivial compared to the truth that he feels and he knows now. Imagine, I'm sure it happened to all of you, very vivid dream. In your dream, maybe you are scared or maybe you are whatever, very happy. It seems so real. Let's say something a bit difficult, a bit dramatic, or a bit challenging in your dream, and really it feels real. And then you wake up. And then when you wake up and you remember that dream, it doesn't seem that terrible. I mean, it's just a dream. Well, it's an image I can use to try to explain to you, to convey to you, how does it feel like for a soul once up there, and they see what did happen and the way they dealt with their challenges to the point that they did commit suicide. They feel guilty because it doesn't seem that big of a deal anymore. But that's really not what is bothering the soul that much. This is. But the soul sees all the opportunities he would have had if he hadn't committed suicide. Let's suppose that Bob, let's take an example. Bob, unfortunately, is dealing with depression and suicidal thoughts, and he decides to commit the terrible act. And then up there, maybe he's going to see that maybe a few months or maybe a couple of years down the road, maybe he would have met Susie. Maybe they would have been married. Maybe they would have had kids. Or maybe he would have made a great friend, befriended someone great at this place or whatever. He sees it all. He sees all the opportunities he missed. And even if the life was still difficult with challenges, then the soul sees all the opportunity of growth and improvement that he missed and destroyed, deciding to go back to heaven. Even if when the person does it, the person doesn't say, I want to go back to heaven. They don't think that way. If they knew all this, they wouldn't do it, obviously. But so the soul sees all those missed opportunities. And that's what creates guilt, because they understand they wasted time, they lost time, and now they're going to have to do it all over again. But that's not enough. What they see also is the sadness of the people around them. If there are some people, and they thought that nobody did care, and finally they see all those people crying, and being so sad, and they can't do anything about it. They want to scream at them. I'm sorry, but those, even if they were close to them, those humans, as you know, not everybody has clairaudience and open third eye. So basically they scream and they want to apologize, and they can't do it. And they feel the pain. And now they also see that they have created karma by creating that pain in all those people. So now the soul knows that, number one, all the missed opportunities, including joyful things or opportunities of growth. Number two, understand that now the soul will have to go back and do things all over again, but in worse, because now the soul can see all the karma it has created with the pain of other people. But that's not it. There is a last part of the speech, which is a last part of, unfortunately, what the soul discovers, and which makes the soul be super guilty. By committing suicide, the person deprived all other people of their own karmic lines. We said, let's suppose that Bob would have met Susie. Well, guess what? Susie came to us to meet Bob. What's going to happen now? Basically, it's a mess. So all the things, all the people that Bob would have met, should have met, granted that he wouldn't have taken away his own life, now those karmic lines, those plans are gone. They are destroyed. Do you understand the responsibility for the soul when the soul does realize that? That's just terrible. So now you created some karmic dysfunction in all the people that you would have met. And some of them came back to us, including meeting Bob and living things with Bob. And maybe some of those people had really major karmic encounters with Bob, and now they can't. So now he's slowing them down too. Am I clear in what I'm explaining to you? Okay. So that's what creates such guilt in the soul. And to finish, I said that my question earlier was a bit weird. Is it okay? Is it admissible that we do commit suicide? And I said I discussed with some people who had different views, and I really want to address that. I have heard a lot of people say, well, Angelo, we have free will. So the maximum extent of the free will is that we take our own life. So if we can do it, we can do it. And after all, my body, my choice. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that, first of all, this is not your body. This body has been given graciously to you, to your soul, so that your soul can experiment human condition. And secondly, I just have a question. Of course, I'm not talking to you because you're not the one who are telling me this. I'm just putting a fictional discussion. I'm asking, who did you create your soul? No. Who did create your soul? God. Okay. So you don't own your soul because God did create it. So now you are telling me that you own your body, in which your soul, which you don't own and has been created by God, lives in. That makes sense. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we've been living for so many years in the serpent speech, the serpent of the Garden of Eden. Do what you willed. You can do anything you want. You are God. And that's why we have switched in the Western world in so much individualism, like my pain, my emotions, my desire, my want, my will. And everybody has to bend to that. Because what matters is me, myself, and I. Yeah, maybe. You can do it, so do it. Do the terrible act. I can bet, and I know, I'm going to tell you, you're going to regret it. And this romantic or revolutionary view about my body, my choice, I do what I want, to the point that I can take my own life, is not going to last a very long time once you go up there and you see exactly what you did, unfortunately, and you have a clear understanding of who you really are and the consequences of your act. So, to finish that speech, first of all, was I clear in things I said to you? Okay. Again, I'm very grateful for the temple, because when Reverend Donna, I'm going to finish with those sentences, asked me for the topic, and I sent that topic. Nobody told me, Angelo, not sure about that. So thank you very much for the temple, for giving me this opportunity to talk about that, and thank you all. And I really do hope that everything which I shared with you tonight not only could maybe help you or help you help somebody, because that's the goal. We are all God's children. And let's not forget that we should help each other and love each other in those very difficult times on earth. Let's not lose the main focus. So thanks to all of you. I love you all, and God bless you.